We only had Z moves for one generation, not including National Dex, but even in such a short time, they certainly left an impression on Pokemon players. They aren't as cool as Megas, sure, and not everyone is a fan, but the ability to sacrifice an item slot to completely nuke some poor opposing Pokemon is certainly interesting. And whether you love them or hate them, we can all agree that at least it's better than Dynamax. But anyway, not all Z moves are created equal, and some are a lot better than others. In this video, I'll go through what are, in my opinion, the top 3 best and the top 3 worst Z moves in Pokemon. So, enough talking, drop a like, subscribe, and we'll get right into it. Let's go! Alright, so to get started, here's our number 3 best for today. I considered a few things. I considered, Z Heal Bell on Magina, obviously is a great pick to fully heal you. I considered even some weird things like Z Mirror Move or Z Parting Shot. But I think ultimately I really had to go with this, which you can see, Azumarill, Belly Drum. If you didn't know, Normalium Z, its effect on Belly Drum is before the effect of the move, before it, cuts your health in half, gives you max attack. It actually fully heals you, and this is good for a couple reasons. Normally, traditionally, Azumarill would run a Citrus Berry, right, to sort of get a similar sort of healing effect with Belly Drum. But Normalium Z is good, one, because it lets Azumarill work defensively before. With a Citrus Berry, you can't really use your Azumarill to switch into stuff, because, you need as much HP as you can to get away with a Belly Drum. But the nice thing about Normalium Z, especially with Pokemon like Heatran or Ash Greninja in the tier, Water Fairy is a really great defensive typing that, was sort of unexplored before. You couldn't use it like that. But Normalium Z, it lets you, take a hit, switch into a Specs Hydro Pump or something, and then the turn after you take another Hydro Pump, maybe you're on 33% health left, and you just pop Normalium Z, there you go, all the way back up to full, Belly Drum cuts you down to half. That would be the sort of traditional use of this Z move, but there's another great example, like if your opponent clicks Outrage, or their Specs locked into Draco Meteor or something with like one of the Lardy twins, or they're asleep, like you set an opponent to sleep with Yawn as they kill you, so they fall asleep. What you can do is you can Belly Drum regular, which is same as usual while they're not able to do anything. And then what you can do is Normalium Z Belly Drum. It'll heal you up to full, and the move will fail because you're already at max attack, essentially, if that makes sense. So this is pretty good. Azumarill, I'll be honest, it's seen better days. It used to be a lot more viable. I think Pokemon like this, these sort of like very linear, streamlined setup threats, like they're not very flexible, if that makes sense. So they sort of get less popular as time goes by. But, I had to include it. This is, a fantastic combo. Not other, like, Belly Drum users really like to use it, unfortunately. Obviously, Slurpuff wants a Citrus Berry to use on Burden. If I just check here, Slurpuff. Hang on. Yeah, just go into the Dex. Yeah, see here, Belly Drum Sweeper, Belly Drum Player Off Return, Drain Punch. That's fine. So it's only really Azumarill that gets to use this, but it's such a great example of how Z moves sort of amplify and make a Pokemon like this much more flexible and viable, I would say. And I think that's enough to get in number 3. Obviously, you can replace it with, like I said, Z Heal Bell, like on Magina. There's a lot of Pokemon that use very specific Normalium Z status moves like this, but Azumarill's my favorite, so we're putting it at number 3. Alright, and starting off with our number 3 worst. It's cheating a little bit, I'll say it, but to be honest, a lot of Z moves are just kind of meh. Like, there's a lot of them that just reset your stat changes to 0 if you have any negative stats. And that's, like, honestly, like 80% of status moves. So, to find the ones that are truly just, like, bad and not really worth clicking ever is a bit more taxing. But Metronome, I think, is up there. Say what you will about Metronome, it's obviously a gimmicky move. There's a famous replay of a player called Bruno clicking Metronome, getting a Rock Wrecker versus a Charizard Y, which is really, really funny. But usually the move isn't used for obvious reasons. Pokemon players kind of like consistency. But I will say, the move does have one use that I've seen in competitive play, especially in Little Cup. There's a player called Ace Hunter 1 from Canada. And what he would do is he would use metronome on his abras, which, you know, you're thinking, well, why is that? But it's actually it's actually super clever, because if you didn't know, Pawnyard is very strong in Little Cup. And obviously it sort of eats Abra for dinner, right? Especially with Sucker Punch. So what Ace Hunter would do is, against a very chipped Pawnyard, because Pawnyard gets chipped throughout the game, checking stuff like Vullaby, he would bring in his Abra. He would not go for the hidden power fighting as you'd expect, because he knows he's going to get Sucker Punched. But instead he would go for Metronome, which is technically a status move, which means Sucker Punch would fail. And then he would just hope he gets an attack. It doesn't take a very strong attack. Like I said, he'd use it versus very chipped Pawnyards, but honestly, it's a great option, and it usually works, to be honest. Nobody really expects it to happen. Normally you put it with a Focus Sash, because most Pawnyards might not want to Sucker Punch a full HP Abra, because they know it might have Substitute, which would be really bad for them, so they'll just go for an attack. But if your Abra's at 1%, they'll always Sucker, and that's where Metronome that he used would really thrive. And so the same idea is true on Alakazam and Gengar, obviously. Pokemon like a Bishop, you know, grown up Pawnyard and OU. Metronome is like, you know, in theory you could use it. Again, you'd probably want it on a Sash Alakazam, because Magic Guard Sash is a really good combo, famously. But you know, it's certainly something you could use. I wouldn't really recommend it, but again, Normalium Z, using Z Metronome, again, if you didn't know, it just uses the Z version of whatever move you pull, and 80% of them are pretty mid, to be honest. Just like pulling a Z double team or whatever, and like changing your stats back to 0 is not really what you want. So I think this is a fair call to put number 3 worst. But unbelievably, it does get worse than this, because at least Normalium Z will, you know, do something if you roll an attack. So that's what we're working with here in the worst list. But I think we can move on to our number 2. Alright, and that number 2 best is going to be something pretty unusual, actually. I feel like most people expected to see the signature Pokemon Z moves, you know, light that burns the sky or whatever, or even stuff like more gimmicky status moves on here. But number 2 best is just going to be Flyinium Z, straight up Supersonic Sky Strike. And there's a couple reasons for this. Here I've gathered a list of all the Pokemon in OU that use it regularly. There's some really rare ones like Automatize, Celesteela you might see, but these are the main ones generally that you'd see. Landorus, obviously great, runs on Swords Dance sets, the Drop It, Tornadus, Dragonite, Gyarados, Salamence. And the reason Flyinium Z in particular is so good is a couple things. One, it's actually the most commonly used Z move, if you didn't know. Here I have the usage stats for the most recent SPL. And if we look at the move usage stats here on the side, let me make sure you can see that. Yep, you can. Supersonic Sky Strike had 9 usage, which is, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you have to remember, you can only use one Z move a game. So it's gonna have tough competition with other moves. You can see Earthquake, Stealth Rock, U-Turn at the top. But Supersonic Sky Strike, 9 uses, and obviously then you start to get to the lesser used ones down here. Gigavolt, Hydro, Sub-Zero, Slammer. And Supersonic Sky Strike is so good, not only because it's on these 2 amazing Pokemon, Torn and Lando, but because it gives access to Flying Stab that isn't restricted by bad moves that are most flying moves. You can see here, this thing's using Fly to activate its Stab, which is something it could never really do in earlier generations. You know, there's no Brave Bird on Landorus, unfortunately. But now with Flyinium Z, you can actually really just drop a bomb on something that you never could before. Same true. Hurricane obviously is a better move than, you know, Fly, but it's not really a great move if we're being realistic. 70% accuracy is really trash. And Flyinium Z, again, just consistent power, lets you just drop, you know, delete something, ideally. And same here, this is, you know, pre-dual Wing Beat. Salamence and Dragonite don't have any Flying Stab they can use. They have to rely on, again, Fly to activate a lot of their power, and Flyinium Z finally opens that up for them. Same's true for Gyarados with Bounce, which is basically just a renamed Fly, but it can paralyze. It's just a great Z move in general. I was considering other ones like, you know, Groundinium Z, Waterinium Z, even just like normal EMZ, like the Giga Impact Katana you see sometimes, like Hyper Beam as well. But I think Flying EMZ is really the best Z move and what it opens up for certain Pokemon, and I think its usage sort of reflects that. So that's going to be our number 2. Alright, and our number 2 worst, you can see here, I've got Victini, I've got Jirachi, Celebrate, Happy Hour. If you didn't know, Z effect of these moves, and also, you know, conversion on Porygon, it's pretty weird. It's just an Omni boost. It gives you +1 in every single stat when you use it. But, you know, you might be a little bit confused. Like, wait a minute, Victini's, you know, that's an OU Pokemon. This is like a good set. It's one of the sample sets. You can see at the bottom here. So why is this here? Well, I'm not actually talking about Victini and Jirachi as the thing. I'm talking about another move activated by Normalium Z, which does, you know, the exact same thing as Celebrating Happy Hour. If I click Add Pokemon, Import, you can see it is a set I cooked up earlier. The number 2 worst Z move is going to be Z Sketch. Yeah, I think this one goes without explaining. Sketch, you know, Smeagol's the only Pokemon that can use it. Even though it already gets access to Celebrating Happy Hour, but let's just talk about Sketch. There's no point to it. It's just so useless because your attack stat and your special attack stat is 20 respectively. So boosting that up, 152 times 1.5 is what? 76 plus 152, 228 if I'm doing my math correctly in my head. And it's not doing anything. Here's a set I cooked up. It shouldn't be Technician. There's nothing to use it with. It should be Own Tempo, even if that helps. But, you know, Sketch, get that boost, Boom Burst, Sword Power, Secret Sword to break through those Chanseys. It probably does like 30% to Chansey, if we're being generous. Yeah, I mean, Sketch is just, it's basically entirely useless. Maybe if there's some weird tier where like the usage is so like like ZU Deluxe, where Smeagol's whopping offensive stats allow it to take on like Caterpie or whatever, like those old 10U tiers for RBY. But I don't know. This is just bad. This is like, it's not literally useless as in it does nothing, but it's as close to useless as you can get while technically doing something, which is maybe a bit of foreshadowing for number 1. But let's move on to the number 1 best to get this thing out of here. All right, and our number 1 best, you know, you might have seen this coming. It's got to be Kommo-o. It's got to be the Kommo-o Z, Clangorous Soul Blaze. This move is just insane. I don't know if you know what this move does, but if I type, can I pull it up in here? Well, you know, it doesn't say what it does, but essentially it's a, I think 180 power Dragon type special move. That's and the effect, you know, it's like Celebrate. It's like Sketch, believe it or not. It boosts all your stats, which is just insane. Obviously, you know, Kommo-o isn't the most, you know, viable Pokemon. It's an OU. It's a good Pokemon, but you know, it's not the strongest possible Z move user. It's not Necrozma Ultra Dusk God main, whatever it's called, Dawnwing. I don't even remember the name of the Pokemon. The Light Burns the Sky guy, I mean. But, I mean, I can't really justify putting anything else over, you know, Kommo-o Z. It's all the benefits of a traditional devastating Drake, plus all the benefits of a Z Celebrate. This might be the single strongest move that's ever been in Pokemon, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I've been putting up replays. I'll show you the replay for Kommo-o right now. Like, amazing things you can do with it. Drain Punch, Close Combat, Poison Jab, Earthquake, Flamethrower, Boom Burst. So many special and physical things you can try with it. The one downside I will say is with a lot of like Tapus and the tier especially, if they switch into your Clangorous Soul Blaze, completely nullifies it. You really got to be careful with fairies when you're using this thing, and it's sort of the biggest drawback of it. But even still, this is, you know, I looked at all the signature Z moves for all the Pokemon, like, you know, Extreme Evo Boost, 7-star Soul Stealing Strike on Marshadow, all that stuff. But none of them are as good as Kommo-o Z. This is an insane attack. And, you know, the replacement, they replaced it with just Clangorous Soul in Gen 8, if you didn't know, which, you know, it doesn't give you a super powerful move. It cuts a third of your HP for the same Omni boost. It's crazy, and that's what's considered balanced. Just to give an idea of how outrageously strong, you know, this move is. So this is what I'm going to say is the best Z move in Pokemon history. I think that's pretty uncontroversial. Maybe some people will disagree, but this move is insane. Let's see a move that isn't insane, however. We're our number one worst. Alright, and our number one worst is going to be the Psyche Z. You saw it in the thumbnail. Cresselia, Latias. I don't know what they're thinking with this move. Obviously, the moves I'm referring to are sort of a tie. It's Lunar Dance and Healing Wish. And, you know, there's a pretty clear reason they're tied. If I go to the Z moves page on Bulbapedia, you can see all the effects and moves on this page. So take a guess. What do you think the special effect for Lunar Dance is? Well, if you guess it did literally nothing, which is crazy, you would be correct because, well, that's what it does. If I find Healing Wish as well, I'll just search for it. Healing Wish. Again, nothing. And you might be thinking, well, there's other moves that sort of sacrifice your life or whatever. What about Memento? They remember to give someone a Memento. Memento basically becomes Healing Wish. When you use it, the thing you go into becomes fully healed, right? So it just baffles my mind. What were they thinking with this? There's so many things you could have done with Healing Wish, you know, or like Lunar Dance, obviously. Like maybe when you use it, the Pokemon you go into gets a stat boost or something. Maybe too strong for Healing Wish, but Lunar Dance is supposed to be like the signature move. It's a strong move on Cresselia. So maybe you could even make it like a Celebrate type move. Pop your Z move, Lunar Dance, go into something, and it heals and gets a Omni Boost. That's maybe too strong, to be honest. But it's just an example of something you could do. It's so weird. Again, every other move, everything else in the game has an effect. Some of it's pretty useless, to be honest. Like Eerie Impulse, you know, raising your special defense by a stage. I don't think it's going to draw any people. Resets users lowered stats on Quiver-Dance. Like, I think Quiver-Dance is already good enough. It's not cool. Heart Swap gives you crits, but it's getting inside the point. Why? They just forgot to give an effect to this move. It's so weird. It's crazy to have a move worse than Z-Sketch. Like, really think about that. Like, at least Z-Sketch, you know, you're trying to do something, potentially, in some universe. There is no situation ever, not in a million years, not in a trillion years, where you would ever want to click Z on this. And for that reason, I just have to call it the worst Z move in history. It does nothing. It's wasting your Z move and your item slot. So, you know, it's certified trash. And that's gonna be it for the rankings. If you can think of any good Z moves, obviously there's some cool ones like Splash gives you a +3 attack boost. I was thinking about putting that. There's some trash ones, like, to be honest, a lot of them are bad or just like mid, but these are the ones I could find that were really the worst of the worst. But if there's anything I forgot, please, you know, let me know. Leave your own comments, especially if you know about National Dex. I don't follow National Dex, but if there's something amazing there, again, let me know. I'd love to hear about that, really. But yeah, that's it from me. Talking about the best and worst Z moves in Pokemon. I hope you enjoyed. And I'm out. Thanks.